Hello, my name is Drew. I am an adult and teen services librarian at the Bloomfield Township Public Library. They bring me out here to the senior center once a month to do programs, do book talks, to hang out in the lobby and accost people trying to go to the gym, whatever the case may be. With pleasure. But today I am here to talk about cutting the cable cord. So you are all here because you're considering cutting the cord. Maybe you're just curious about all of the talk around it, all of the streaming services, everything, and want to learn more about it. And that's fair. In the last 15 years or so, internet and streaming and everything has really exploded, and more options for accessing video content have emerged. There's a lot of growth in that area of technology right now, and things seem to be improving drastically for years and years. It feels more and more like they're approaching a bubble at this point where there are too many streaming services, but that's neither here nor there. I personally cut the cord. I sort of never cut the cord because I never had a cord. I lived in my parents' house, and when I went to college, there was no cable in the dorms, so I functioned how I needed to. And when I got my own apartments after college, it was just never a thing that I considered. There is a handout on the table for that, yes. So according to CNBC, in the third quarter of 2023, Comcast lost 18,000 high-speed broadband customers and 490,000 video subscribers as Americans continue to drop traditional cable TV for streaming services. It's not really surprising because cable customers are notoriously unhappy with their service and the cost, and competition is increasing every year with these streaming services. So today we'll provide an overview for what cutting the cord means and help determine if it's something that you personally might be interested in. So this is sort of the quick breakdown of what we're going to do. We're going to cover important vocabulary terms just so you stay with me for the next hour, 40 minutes. Talk about the pros and the cons of cutting the cord. It's not a surefire thing that everyone in this room is going to be interested in doing this. It may be that none of you leave with wanting to, but it's good to explore the options as we go. And then ways to get your preferred content and some devices that may help you work with that. I do have a lot to cover, but I also tend to talk really quickly. So if you miss things, feel free to interrupt me. As I said, joking before this started, I've got the whole script here. You're not going to throw me off. Whatever needs to happen. So these are some of the core terms that we're dealing with as we go here. Starting with app, it's a word that sounds harder to understand than it really is because it's used so frequently with everything these days. App is short for application, in this case referring to a software application. It's just a device or a software program that goes on your electronic device to do a specific task. Microsoft Word is an application in that sense, whereas something like a web browser, Internet Explorer or Chrome, isn't, because it's access to all kinds of other things, whereas Microsoft does its one thing very well. Streaming these days generally refers to when a user is watching digital video content or listens to digital audio content over the internet. With streaming content, the user doesn't have to own the content, and they don't have to download the entire video or audio file before they start watching or listening to it. Live streaming refers to internet content that is delivered in real time. Broadcast TV is television that's transmitted through radio waves. It's the tradition of what you're used to local TV stations with an antenna. It's different from streaming in that it's not shared over the internet. Screencasting, or the shortened form of casting, is transmitting video or data displayed on the screen of a computer or mobile device onto another device, usually with accompanying audio. This sort of HDMI hookup, putting what's on my screen up there, is a version of casting. It's just done with a hard wire instead of over the internet. And then a streaming service versus a streaming device. We're going to use these terms a lot through this. It's really the core of what we're doing here. And they're the two pieces needed to watch content through streaming. So you can think of it as a DVD and a DVD player. The streaming service is the DVD. It's the thing you want to watch. You're going on to Netflix to watch Netflix. A streaming device is like the DVD player. You can have a Netflix account just like you can own a DVD, but if you don't have something that can put it on your TV, then you won't be able to watch it anyway. Or put it on your computer, phone, whatever you're watching through. That's sort of the connecting point to get the content onto how you can actually watch it. So we'll start with the pros of cutting the cord. The first is cost. With a traditional cable or satellite subscription, there are high, sometimes very high, monthly costs in addition to whatever installation fees or equipment rentals you have. It's not uncommon for people to be paying $100, $120, $150 for a cable and internet package. And that's a lot of money depending on your TV consumption habits and your preferences. You could potentially save a lot of money by cutting the cord. When you cut the cord, the largest cost is upfront in making sure that you have the correct equipment in order to do it. Flexibility. When you have a traditional cable or satellite subscription, you mostly get to pay to get one service at one location. There are a couple of options here that you can, in the future, take up north when you're traveling. I'm going to the UP this summer, and I'm taking my Roku streaming stick with me to just plug into the TV there, and I will have open access to everything I have at home. It's a lot more fluid than a traditional cable service that is tethered to the home. Even if you have your own vacation home or second home or something, you have to pay for another service to get the cable going there. A la carte, can't help that right now. A la carte, if you get hundreds of channels, do you ever find yourself just watching a few of those? You're scrolling through all the channels and you pass 70 that you'll never touch to get to the 2 that you're really interested in. If you're ever thinking, can I just get HBO? Can I just get ESPN? The short answer is yes. And that's what the streaming services try to provide. A future where you pay just for the channels in a cable service that you want may not be too far off. Even a few years ago, a standalone HBO service was something that they were patently against. And now they've got Max, which is an evolution of HBO Max, which is an evolution of HBO Go. They've been doing this for a minute. And it's something that they said for years and years that they were never going to touch because they were tied to their original service. And as everything has progressed in technology, they had to adapt with the times, and everything is going to continue to have to adapt to the times. And finally, consumer power. As the old saying goes, money talks. The penetration rate of pay TV services has decreased every year for the last several years, while the percentage of cord cutters has been increasing. There's a growing percentage of people like me who are what the internet calls cord nevers, the people who have never paid for their own TV service. It's mostly millennials and Gen Zers, but people are jumping on board with that every day. Because there is consumer demand, enterprising companies are rising to meet it, creating flexible packages to try and give TV services a run for their money. And all of this competition has forced the telecom companies to respond with more competitive, attractive pricing models and bundling options in order to retain some of the customers that they can. So even if you do leave today deciding you're not interested in cutting the cord, you're overall happier with the way that your service currently is, this trend is still going to benefit you because the cable services are going to have to fight to keep you. It also forces content developers to invest in the development of high-quality, in-demand content that they're hoping will draw you to their exclusive service. If anyone has subscribed to Netflix just to watch The Crown or The Stranger Things, subscribed to Hulu just to watch Handmaid's Tale, and then cancel it right after, you'll know a little bit of that. And then the cons. To be fair, it's not all sunshine and roses. Cutting the cord doesn't work for everyone, depending on how you interact with your TV and your viewing habits. And if you end up being one of the people that it doesn't work for, I hope you'll leave with at least a little bit more feeling of contentness that you are making the right decision for you. So the initial setup, for some, the investment in the initial setup is, both from a cost and a technology standpoint, is too much. If you're someone who isn't ready to commit to cutting the cord, the initial purchase of some of the things that you may need to do it may be more than you want to spend. If you're someone that finds technology intimidating or too complicated or too stressful, it also might not be for you. The second con is that internet is required. For all but the most basic package of a TV plus an antenna, you will still need to have some form of high-speed internet service in order to watch all of these streaming content shows, which you're most likely getting from whatever company you buy your TV service from anyway. So if anyone is coming into the room hoping that they can walk out and immediately rip up their Comcast bill and call customer service and finally give them the real peace of your mind, for most people, that's not what is gonna result here. You will still need to be tied to these companies for an internet service. And as the previous slide said, with the bundling and everything that the cable services are trying to do to keep customers, the cost of just having internet without cable or phone is going up because they're trying to mitigate costs and make it more lucrative to keep your cable service. The third is less diverse programming. This is the other side of the Consumer Power Pro. If anyone listens to the NPR show Planet Money, a while back they had a segment about how cord cutting is forcing some of the pay TV providers to reduce their channel lineups because they're not making enough money for carrying those. If there's some obscure TV channel that you love and watch all the time, you probably won't be able to get it without cable, and you might see it get cut from your cable lineup if the telecom companies are needing to be a little bit more choosy about the channels that they are providing. There's less opportunity for just stumbling across new content with pay TV services, so if that's how you prefer to find your content, then that's also something to consider. And then we put a la carte here because it is sort of a double-edged sword. There are a lot of amazing streaming services out there. On the handout, I listed what I thought were the most popular ones, and it's still like 8 or 9 things right at the top. And paying for all of them is going to, if you decide to go for all of them, that's going to equal to the same, if not more, as your cable service with honestly less functionality because it's all in different places now. So you really have to approach what you're looking for out of your television service and do the math before you cut. The standard measure twice then cut is exactly what's in play here. But this is the big part, is how to access all of your favorite content without a cable service. So first and foremost, the library. I would be remiss if I ignored my primary role and didn't hype up the library services. The library has a huge collection of DVDs and TV shows. We put out monthly lists of the new things that we're getting, and I think it's a good 60 or 70 titles that we're adding a month just in terms of new content, not even going into the things that we replace or backfill or anything like that. If you are looking for a DVD that's not on our shelf or something that we don't own, as long as you have a Bloomfield Township Public Library card, if something's not on hold, you can place a hold on, not on the shelf, you can place a hold on it. If we don't own it, you can put in a purchase request for us to buy it. I'm the person that purchases DVDs, and I can tell you 99 times out of 100, if there's a patron interested in a movie or a TV show, I'm gonna buy it. Because the primary concern when I'm going through DVD purchases is, will someone watch this? And if the answer I know is already yes, then that's a huge barrier cleared in order to purchase things. We do our absolute best to stay current on DVD and TV trends. You do have to keep in mind that a lot of original content for streaming services, they don't put out on DVD. They are creating that content with the goal of getting you to purchase a subscription with them. So, I just 2 days ago had someone come to the library and get frustrated that Marvelous Mrs. Maisel wasn't something that we carried in the library. That's an Amazon Prime original show, and they never made a DVD of it. There's nothing we can do about that. But yeah, like I said, if there's anything that you are interested in that we don't own, you can always talk to the Adult and Teen Services desk. They will email me directly and say, hey, a patron is interested in this, and I say, cool, let's have it. Hoopla is one of the streaming services that the library provides that you can stream movies, TV shows, as well as music, audiobooks, ebooks, and comics with a computer or through the Hoopla app on a smartphone or a tablet. Hoopla is a service that patrons can use for free and use up to 16 items each month. We are more than halfway through the month, so this is a great time to explore Hoopla, and the next one that I'm going to talk about is called Canopy, because it operates on the same model. We do have a handout on the table for you. You may be wondering if you can access Hoopla on your TV. The answer is yes. Hoopla does have a streaming app that most, if not all, of the main streaming devices will recognize that'll be in their app library. And once you download the app to your TV and put it up and sign into the same account, you can watch any content that you have checked out. You can also do, what I like to call the broke college student method of exactly this, taking an HDMI cable and hooking it up from your computer to your TV and just mirroring what's up there. The second service is Canopy. It is similar in that it is a streaming service for movies, TV shows, and documentaries. It started life as a biography and documentary service provided to academic libraries, but they've since expanded and gotten a lot of deals with film production companies to get their catalogs. They've got a ton of the classic Paramount Picture films up to current breakout A24 films. I think they put the A24 films on there within 3 or 4 weeks of the DVDs coming out. They're really, really thorough on those. That production company did like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is a movie that got a lot of buzz within the last year. Like Hoopla, Bloomfield card holders can set up an account for free, and they have a ticketing model where you get 48 tickets for the month, and everything that you want to watch costs between 2 and 5 tickets, depending on the length, if it's a TV show or movie, how recent it is. They have their own algorithm for applying those. Canopy does also have a streaming app, which should be available based on the devices that you have access to. The next is what most people tend to think of when we're talking about streaming services, the on-demand services. There are a ton of streaming content services. Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon Prime Video are some of the most popular. With the infusion of new content in the last 5 years or so, new services like Disney+, Apple TV+, Max are quickly on the rise as well. The major streaming services enter into deals with TV and film production companies for the right to provide their content on each of their platforms. Some of them will be exclusive rights where you can only get something on, say, Peacock. Some of them will be an older syndicated show. I think How I Met Your Mother is on like 7 streaming services at this point because they just loan it out to everyone. It's their ways of getting money. Most, if not all, of the major streamers are also able to produce their own content that is exclusive to their service. Each of these are meant as a draw to their platform, hoping that with enough exclusive content, it will make their service enticing enough that you will pay for a subscription. These providers offer on-demand content, meaning it's available at all times. There's no, you have to watch at 8 p.m. 7 Central, like it is with the cable service, or say ahead of time that you want to record this in order to save it for forever. Once they put it up there, it is 24-hour access. And virtually all of them do a 7-day demo where you can create a demo account and use the service for a week to see if it's something that you'd be interested in using more frequently. In addition to the on-demand streaming services, there are also internet TV providers who offer live TV that you stream over the internet. These are the ones I've heard the most about, but there are others out there and more are popping up all the time. Hulu live streaming debuted at the end of 2017. They are currently offering all kinds of packages to try and make it more lucrative for you to go and sign with them. So if you get Hulu Live TV, you get access to the Hulu streaming library, the Disney Plus streaming library, and the ESPN Plus streaming library. They're doing a lot of things with bundling these days for streaming services. YouTube TV is another new internet service. It is, I think, the cheapest one up here, and it offers most of the same channels as Hulu Live. All 4 of these are on the handout there, along with the link to each of their websites to see what channels are being offered on them. All of them are going to have slightly different packages. Most of them will have multiple packages where you can pay a premium to get more sports channels, more Spanish channels, what have you. Different packages based on your viewing preferences. If it hasn't sunk in yet, there are a ton of major streaming services out there. None of the titles that they offer are stagnant, unless it's an exclusive streaming title like The Crown, Stranger Things, things that are created by the company. They will only sign these things as temporary licenses, where they will gain access to this show or this movie for a month or 6 months or a year. They are never stagnant. So if you watch something on Netflix 2 months ago, it could be on like Hulu and Peacock now. They could have different deals. They're brokering these deals all of the time. For example, it can also change quite a bit when a new streaming service enters the game. I remember I was doing a marathon of Parks and Rec when it was on Netflix, and I was like halfway through season 4, and then NBC decided that Peacock, their home streaming service, had gotten big enough that they could start moving their shows onto it and offer them as exclusive deals. So Parks and Rec went off of Netflix, and I would have had to purchase a Peacock subscription to finish watching it out. We had the DVDs, so I just checked those out instead. But that's just an example of how quickly those things can change. To help with this, Just Watch is an app and website that I use a lot to figure out what streaming service a title is on. You can go to the app or the website and just type in the show that you're looking for, and it will tell you what services provide it and if there's an additional cost to it. A lot of them, like Prime Video and YouTube, will offer rentals of a lot of these to pay $1.99 to gain access to it for 3 days. You can also purchase them. You have to hunt them down to find them for free, and things that have all of the seasons. It's a lot more convoluted than it was 10 years ago. But Just Watch is what I like to use to get around that. And then lastly, basic antenna. Broadcast TV is still available out there in our zip code under optimal weather conditions and optimal antenna placement. You can receive up to 38 channels with an indoor antenna or 52 channels with an outdoor antenna. Antenna technology has come a long way, and there are a lot of over-the-air digital HD channels that you can access with a good HD antenna, and may even look crisper and sharper than they do from the cable box because they aren't compressed for transmission. There are probably even some oddball HD antenna shows and channels that you can't get through your cable box that you could through an antenna. So now we're going to talk about devices. Everything that we've talked about so far is the different ways that you can access your programming. But unless you're talking either an antenna or a DVD from the library, you will still need some sort of streaming device if you're looking to put it on your television. This isn't the case if you're going to watch on a smartphone or a tablet, because those can just download those apps directly and show up on the screen. But unless you have a smart TV, that's not what the TV is designed for. So you do need an additional device to connect to those streaming services. My dad is technically a cord cutter. All he has is an antenna and a TV. And until the coronavirus lockdown, he was perfectly happy with that. He didn't pay for internet, although he does now. And he doesn't have most of the fancy gadgets. I shared my Disney Plus login with him so he could watch The Mandalorian and so my mom could watch Hamilton. So unless all you plan to do is watch live content on network television with just an antenna and a TV, you will need some kind of special equipment in order to access the content you love without a cable subscription. There are a lot of devices out there. The competition for them is growing constantly. So I'm just going to talk about some of the most popular ones according to Consumer Reports. That's how I sort of picked the top 5 here. So Roku has several generations of their streaming player, the most recent being the Roku Ultra. They also have a streaming stick, which is this tiny thing that it looks about 2, maybe 3 times the size of a flash drive, so still relatively small, that plugs right into your HDMI port in the TV, and you would operate that way. Roku is pretty consistently among the top-rated streaming players by Consumer Reports, predominantly for its lack of affiliation with content providers like Apple and Amazon, which gives it a lot of flexibility. They've also started their own streaming channel that is free for all Roku users. The catalog is not the greatest because it is all free content that you get just by virtue of having a Roku, but it is content that they provide. I've used it a couple of times to watch back seasons of Great British Bake Off and Project Runway because they existed over there, and you can't find those anywhere else. For all of these, I'm not really going to go into the costs of all of them, just because it weighs down the presentation. All of the costs are on the handout on there. I updated the costs 4 or 5 weeks ago when I realized this was coming up, so I do not guarantee that everything on there is 100% accurate. NVIDIA Shield TV is one of the bigger brands to come out more recently. The first model of it was launched in 2019 and uses Android technology. It's one that I will admit I have virtually no familiarity with. I am already a loyal Roku service provider, and I felt no need to purchase another one. None of my friends have one of these. So I know that it exists because it is the second highest rated thing on Consumer Reports, and that has me really curious about it. But it's not something that I've ever played with myself. Consumer Reports has it very highly rated, again, because its lack of affiliation to Amazon or Apple for their streaming services. But it is very...
Its own original content?
It's an access point. It allows you to have access to the Netflixes and the Hulus and all of them. It's an app hub, but people really like the user experience of them, the speed, the memory, the usability of it. Most of what these come down to, because you can access, at minimum, the big 9 that are here. You can access these from any device that we talk about. Most of what is differentiating between them is initially the price, but really it is the user experience of how you like it. My little brother moved to Massachusetts and has an Amazon Fire TV, and they love it. It's what works perfectly for them. I can't stand the infrastructure of it. I find it so convoluted. And he is the exact opposite. He loves it. They can find what they're looking for immediately. And it comes down to user preference and how you enjoy using each of these. Not that you should buy one of each to see what it's like, but Amazon Fire TV. It is their answer to the streaming player. It is a small, compact device that comes with a remote control. You can also purchase a game controller for it if you or any relatives are interested in it. The Fire TV is the 3rd highest rated streaming player according to Consumer Reports. Their current newest product is the Amazon Fire Cube, which is sort of a hybrid between the Fire TV and the Echo. So it is Alexa enabled. and you can just talk to it and tell it to start playing a show, and it will turn on the TV and pull up the latest episode and let you go for it. They do also have a Fire Stick, which is, I think, retails only $40. I think I saw it for like $22 when I was on Amazon yesterday. It is insane. They discount their things insanely cheap for their Prime sales days. If you already have Amazon Prime, or if you have an Echo Dot or one of those Alexa-enabled devices, this might be the route for you because it's going to work within your existing infrastructure. If you have Amazon Prime, then you already have access to Amazon Prime Video, and it all works together really well. Apple TV is another one where if you already have Apple products, if you're already familiar with that infrastructure, it may be the route that you want to go. It was the first of the major technology companies to get serious about developing a user-friendly streaming video device. The original Apple TV was released in 2007, and the latest generation was released, I think, 2019. Don't quote me on that. Depending on what memory options you choose, the cost changes, but it is typically the most expensive device that we're discussing today. It's an Apple product, so that shouldn't really shock anyone in the room. It carries a really strong rating from Consumer Reports, particularly with its accessibility between Apple devices. So if you are already an iPhone user, if you have an iPad, if you purchase things on iTunes, if you're an Apple family, then it would make sense to connect this in the same way because you'll be familiar with the infrastructure. Their devices work really well together. Because Apple and Amazon compete for the sale of digital and audio content, it can sometimes get a little cumbersome to use Amazon services on Apple devices and vice versa, but they are getting a lot better at that now that Prime Video and Apple TV Plus are getting the recognition they deserve as streaming services in their own right. The last of the devices is a Google Chromecast. So this is less involved than the rest of the ones that we're talking about because it doesn't have its own hub, really. You can't download apps to it in order to stream Netflix, to stream Hulu, whatever. What it is a internet connection to connect your phone or your tablet or your computer to your TV. So there's a little icon that shows up all the time when you're watching videos. It's a little rectangle with 3 lines coming out of the top right corner of it. That is the symbol for casting. And with Google Chromecast, you take the thing that you're watching on your phone and you send it to the TV and you just watch it on the larger screen. I have a coworker who has a condo in Florida and they don't want to pay for anything down there, so they have a Chromecast that they got for like $40 a few years back, and they just leave that down there, and when they are down there, they will just watch it on their phone and project it onto the television, and that works perfectly for them. This is probably the least desirable option for cord cutters and more beneficial for people who are looking to decrease the cost of their cable service. A lot of people may have, services where they'll pay an extra $10, $15 a month so you get additional streaming boxes in different rooms, particularly if you have people who are going to be watching multiple things at the same time. I remember when I was growing up in our Comcast service, at the height of when my brother and I couldn't stand each other, we had my parents' TV, the basement TV, and a mobile one that we could put in either of our bedrooms if we were fighting over the basement TV, which happened a lot. And because of that, my parents were paying for 2 additional streaming boxes, or not, cable boxes, to put in those different rooms. Google Chromecast is a way to cut down on that. Google does have a streaming video device called a Nexus Player. It is another one that I've never seen in the wild on my own, so I can't really tell you much about it. It is pretty consistently rated below everything else that we've talked about today in terms of user accessibility, but I am told it is getting better as Google is getting a lot more comfortable with their infrastructure and making all of their products match in terms of how you operate them, which is fantastic because they've been behind the ball on that for a while now. Finally, the last option is to use a smart TV. Many new HD TVs are actually what they call smart, meaning they can connect to the internet and use apps to access video, audio, and web content. Depending on the TV that you get, it depends on how good the app library is. So it's important to look into that if you're purchasing a smart TV to make sure that you have access to the streaming services that you are actually interested in before it happens. Back when I was looking at smart TVs, most of them didn't have access to a full app library. They had, the core 10, 12 streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, and Pandora for music. But they didn't allow you to download additional ones. When I was looking at that, it was like 2017. I haven't bought a TV in a while. So they have gotten significantly better at offering more apps in their app library, but it is still not necessarily as great depending on the company that you go through. So it is something that you'll have to look into when you're going into it. One final option to consider is gaming systems. If you or anyone else in your household have a PlayStation or an Xbox gaming system and it's new enough, and by new enough I really mean in the last 10 years, a PS3 and an Xbox 360 I think are both enough. They should have access to a streaming service library. It may be a lot like the smart TVs where they may not carry as many options as dedicated streaming services, but it will still provide easy access to most of the more popular services, and may very well already exist in the house. So now that we've gotten to this step, I know that the next question that is bubbling for everyone is, what is the best option out there? And the short answer is, I don't know. I can tell you the things that have worked for me that I enjoy using. I can tell you, the streaming services that I get the most out of. But the things I watch may not necessarily be the things that you watch. The infrastructure that I'm the most comfortable with may not be the things that you're the most comfortable with. So this is sort of my best option in terms of answering what is the best. The first link on the back page of the handout is the link to their cable cutting guide. You will have to sign into Consumer Reports through the library first if you don't already have a subscription for them. And Consumer Reports is just in the library databases page. But that is what Consumer Reports is for. It's filled with assessments of streaming services, streaming devices, internet companies, although we don't have too much of a say on our internet companies in this area. If you're lucky, you have 3 options. If you're unlucky, you have 1. And yeah, if you go through Bloomfield's website and sign in using your card number first, you get full access to everything Consumer Reports has to offer. And that is the end of what I've got. So at the end of the day, you really have to evaluate the pros and cons for what works for you. When I did this thing in the past, a couple came to me like 2 months later and said that what they did was kept a notebook on the couch and wrote down every time that they sat down and watched TV and what they watched, and then used that as sort of a blueprint of what they would hope to get out of streaming services. So they could know if they were going to take the step of cutting the cord, this is how I access this is how I access that, this I'm going to have to lose, and am I okay with that, etc. It really is an individual decision in terms of what works for you and your family, in terms of how to best manage the costs and technology aspects. So if you add it all up and decide to cut the cord, then I am all for it.